I'm Ray Hilborn. I'm a professor of aquatic and fishery sciences at the University of Washington, and I've been studying fisheries and fisheries management for 50 years. My work has largely been on how to manage fisheries, and I've published over 300 peer-reviewed articles and a major textbook on assessing and managing fisheries. I've been working regularly in New Zealand since 1990, and I'm quite familiar with the New Zealand fisheries management system. And I've conducted a number of studies comparing New Zealand's fisheries management system to other systems around the world, and it always comes out ranked as one of the top 5 fisheries management systems. So what's the environmental impact of fishing? And I want to tell a little story. In January of 2010, I was working on the wildebeest of Serengeti National Park in Tanzania, and Marcus Borner, who was the director of a big NGO there, the Frankfurt Zoological Society, he said, "Ray, I'm an environmentalist. Should I stop eating fish?" And I took this question seriously, and I said, "Well, Marcus, if you don't eat fish, what are you going to eat?" He said, "Well, I'm not a vegetarian. I would eat more beef, chicken, and pork." So I started assembling data from the scientific literature on the relative environmental impacts of different kinds of fishing compared to beef, chicken, and pork. The first thing you discover is that there's a lot of impacts of producing animal protein. Among them, the use of fertilizer and leading to nutrient pollution of freshwater ecosystems, the use of pesticides, the use of antibiotics, the land clearance associated with preparing ground for crops, and soil erosion that results from tilling the soil. Now, essentially, ocean fisheries have none of those impacts. They don't use fertilizer, they don't use pesticides, they don't use antibiotics, and they require almost no fresh water. I am very commonly asked, are New Zealand fisheries sustainable? And there's really 2 parts to that question. One part is, can we keep harvesting the species we harvest into the future so our children and our grandchildren can enjoy the same fish? And the answer is clearly yes. New Zealand has a very well-run scientific and a management system that measures the abundance of fish stocks, adjusts the catches as stocks fluctuate up and down. And there's just no question that so long as the ocean doesn't change too much, the fish that you're harvesting in New Zealand now can continue to be harvested. The more complicated question is about sustainability is the environmental impact of fishing. So fishing certainly has impacts on marine ecosystems. The 2 big ones tend to be bycatch of non-target species and impacts on the benthic communities by bottom trawling. In both of those, New Zealand has extremely well managed those impacts, and by world standards, they're quite low. Andy Sharpless, the CEO of Oceana, the Ocean Advocacy Group, wrote, "Imagine you could produce food without poisoning the soil with fertilizers and pesticides, without putting antibiotics into animals, without causing soil erosion, and without draining rivers and lakes of their fresh water. You can. There is a perfect protein, and that perfect protein is fish."